Planar is an intelligent dynamic spectral equalizer. Rather than applying a fixed preset or automatically forcing your mix into a pre-baked curve, what it does is it continuously scans the incoming audio and compares it against a target shape that you explicitly define. So it makes real-time band-by-band decisions to nudge the sound towards that target. You would use it in a mix or master situation to clean up mud, to control resonances, to balance unpredictably dynamic tracks, or in general to align the overall tonal character of your track with your intended sound profile. I'll be demonstrating these features today across 2 different mix sessions. One of the things that makes Planar different from other similar plugins is that it lets you define your custom curve that you'll be comparing your audio against. And you have some tools for that. So here at the left we have the window, which lets you set a starting point for your curve. So for example, if I set it to 259 Hertz, for example, it will not be processing from 259 downwards. And same thing for the high end. So I can really target a region that I want to process and leave the rest untouched. We have a tilt. In this case, I have it set for brighten, but you can also set it, actually by default, it comes like this, which you would use if you were working in lo-fi kind of material. But for this track, I had it set like this. I'll demonstrate it in a second. And here comes the fun part. We have a shelf that we can use to boost or attenuate the low end. I had it set to boost a little bit. Because I had my tilt set to brighten, so I didn't want to lose low end, so I put it back with the boost here. And we have a high shelf here, which we can cut some high end with, which I'm not doing in this particular session. And we have a parametric mid band. And I actually wanted to give this track a little bit more of a hi-fi sound, and with other plugins, with other similar plugins, I couldn't have done that. I used the mid band to essentially dip a little bit off around 1K with a pretty wide Q. The other very important control is of course the threshold, which lets us decide when we want to start processing the signal, and the knee, which sets a range so we can start the processing smoothly as the signal approaches the threshold. Before we go any further, let me show you what I've done in this mix. I'm using 5 instances of Planar, and let me show you how the mix sounds without them. And now with it on. The reason I use Planar in this mix is because it helps me make everything come forward. The way that it affects the upper mids of the vocals helps me tame the mod on the low mids and just makes the mix more present and more, in this case, more hi-fi because I set the target for that. It's just so effortless. I'm using 1 instance of Planar on the master bus, which is this one I've been showing you, but I'm also using it on the electric guitars. I've got 2. Here is one of them. Just taming that mod on the low end. Just does that beautifully. And then this other guitar, it was getting in the way of the vocal a fair bit, and it also had some harshness on the top end, and this helped me sort that out. Then I put another instance of Planar on my a cappella bus with all the vocals. And you notice how it just tightens them up and makes them come forward in a way that is hard to get with anything else, really. And then this last instance of Planar I'm not actually using in the final mix, but I set it up on the drum bus just to show you how Planar deals with the transients in a way that other spectral balancers just can't. And the magic knob for that is this ignore transient knob, which lets you tell Planar how much it should react to transients, or if it only should act on longer sustained sounds. In the case of the drums, it's very easy to tell. I do have to tell you that I have the threshold set much lower than I usually would, just so that the effect is clearly audible. So these are the drums without it. And if we put the knob all the way to the left, which is what normal spectral balancers would do, it sounds like this. And you can hear artifacts on the transients. But if we ease it, we get all the benefits of the plugin, but none of the problems with the transients. It's magic, really. So notice how the drums come forward, how the overheads are more defined, but we get none of those problems with the transients. And now this knob also helps us when we run it in linear phase mode. As you know, when you're processing with the linear phase, you get pre-ringing, which we can exemplify here. Right. Awful. If we ease back this knob, no pre-ringing. So if you want to use Planar on your master bus and you would run it on linear phase mode, you would use the ignore transient knob to get rid of the pre-ringing, which again is something that other similar plugins struggle to do. Another really cool feature of this plugin is the display. So the way you would normally use Planar is rather subtle. So knowing exactly what you're doing and being able to see it on the display really makes it easier. And you would also use it to set up your curve just the way you want, like I've done here, without having to guess what the plugin is actually doing. Which brings me to the next great feature that I think every plugin should have, which is the Null button. So that lets me know exactly what the plugin is adding or taking away. Check it out. So that way I know exactly what is happening. Now let's hear Planar on a very different song. This is a Latin acoustic pop track, which features mainly vocals and guitar. And this is it without any instances of Planar. Although it's a simple song that features mostly acoustic guitar and vocals, it has quite a bit of top end, and I wanted to make it a little bit warmer. So here's what I did with Planar on the master bus. So what it does is quite wonderful because it makes it warmer, but it makes it more present even, which if you know anything about mixing, you know that that's really hard to get. And this achieves it wonderfully. So let's have another listen. And all I had to do is set the tilt a little bit. I boosted the lows just ever so slightly, and particularly I cut the high end a little bit. But keep in mind that this is not an EQ, so when I do this, I am not cutting away the top end. What I am doing is I'm changing the target curve. So Planar will react in real time to what's happening in the music. It won't just cut everything, which makes it much more musical. And that's with only one instance of Planar on the master bus. But I also used it on other places. So let me show you. Here it is on the acoustic guitars. Here it's bypassed. So notice how it respects all the transients of the guitars and how everything seems to come alive and come forward a little bit. Again, with it off. And I also used it on the vocals. Let me show you that. Here's with it off.
Y hoy te cuento que la vida sigue y va deprisa. Y mientras tanto yo me aferro a tu linda sonrisa. Y tú te quedas mirando de lejos. Mientras no...
So notice how it makes everything sound more consistent. Sometimes she sings with a more nasal tone, and without Planar, you can really hear those changes in timbre, but with Planar, the timbre of the vocal is more consistent throughout. And of course, it does that thing it does, which is to bring the vocal forward in a way that is really hard to get with anything else. So let's hear it again. Without.
Y hoy te cuento que la vida sigue y va deprisa. Y mientras tanto yo me aferro a tu linda sonrisa. Y tú te quedas mirando de lejos. Mientras no encuentro el tiempo de regreso. Cierro mis ojos y estás con tu bicicleta vieja. Recorres el mundo.
Pretty special. Something else I wasn't mentioning, but it's quite important too, is that this plugin is really light on CPU. So that's why, even though this is pretty heavy, both are pretty heavy sessions, you see me using it on buses, on individual tracks, and on the master bus. Since it's quite light on CPU, you can do that. Overall, it's a great and very unique tool that really lets you shape your tone and gives you all the controls to do it just the way you want it.